Good evening. My name is Kyle Bussell, and for the last year, I have experienced a tremendous case of cabin fever. As many of you may sympathize, the COVID-19 pandemic has fundamentally changed the way in which we live through any given day, and also the way in which we perceive any given day. The considerations that we must face every day are not the same considerations from years past. Concepts such as physical distancing, social distancing, as it is more commonly known, while extremely crucial to preventing the spread of the virus, have left many of us feeling more isolated than ever before, have left us with some cabin fever. But if you were to ask a doctor, what does cabin fever even look like? What are the symptoms? Well, in a medically reviewed article by Dr. Stephen Gons, those symptoms may be lethargy, frequent napping, above normal food cravings, extended periods of sadness, even depression, a general sense of hopelessness. Any combination of these symptoms can severely impact the quality of one's life, but it does not mean that we're powerless to prevent them. In fact, it is likely that each of us learned one of the best coping mechanisms for pandemic-induced cabin fever when we were only very young. Today we're going to be talking about the pandemic. We're going to be talking about exercise. We're going to be talking about fun. And we're going to talk about one activity that just may bring all of these things together. And to the first point, the importance of getting outside. Now, as Joe Cocker once said, if you're going to have cabin fever, have a really big cabin. And I can't think of a cabin any bigger than the outdoors. The world is our cabin, and social distancing does require us to avoid contact with one another, but it does not require us to spend all of our time indoors. According to Dr. Gons, going outside, even for a short time, can greatly help to alleviate many of those symptoms mentioned that go along with cabin fever. Most notably, going outside, going into the sun, may help to regulate our circadian rhythms as it relates to the natural processes by which our bodies function. Interestingly, a research study completed at the University of Chicago Medicine only earlier this year has suggested that vitamin D consumption can significantly reduce the likelihood of COVID-19 infection. Now, vitamin D, for those of you who may not be aware, is a conditionally essential vitamin, meaning that it can come from the food that we eat, yes. However, it can also be synthesized by our bodies. The only necessary condition for the synthesis of vitamin D, exposure to sunlight, which for most of us means simply going outside. While we're there, we may as well take advantage of all of that room to roam, get a little exercise. Bringing me to my next point, the importance to stay moving. A study completed within the last 10 years between Stanford University in California and the Max Planck Institute for Human Development in Berlin has found that exercise holds very important health benefits, not only pertaining to the function of the body, but the function of the brain as well. In the experiment, 144 participants, ages 19 all the way to 93, were split into two experimental groups. The first group spent 15 minutes leafing through printed images which were designed to elicit emotional affect. We commonly refer to this emotional affect as mood. The other group spent 15 minutes spinning on stationary bikes. Now, after the 15-minute period, both groups came together and took a mood test and tested their working memory. And the results of the experiment suggested that those individuals who had spent their 15 minutes spinning on a stationary bicycle were exhibiting a greater level of high arousal positive affect. Essentially, the experiment suggests that exercise simply puts people of all ages, from 19 to 93, in a better mood. Apparently, people just want to have a little fun. Bringing me to my final point. My third and perhaps most important point: the importance of fun during this pandemic. As most of you have undoubtedly been told before, there are 4 major neurochemicals responsible for the sensation of joy, contentment, happiness, if you will. Those are dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, endorphins. Now, fun is an integral pathway by which these chemicals can be utilized to naturally heighten the mood. As discussed earlier, exercise has been shown to elevate the mood of people of all ages. Therefore, it falls to reason that exercise itself can indeed be fun, especially when the form that exercise takes represents or reminds us of a time in our lives when most of us were only concerned with joy, contentment, and happiness, and that time, of course, being our childhood. Given a child's proclivity to enjoy a simple bike ride so very much, lends to the conclusion that cycling is just fun. Adults enjoy it just as much. Road cycling is challenging. It is exhilarating. It is liberating in the freedom of movement that it provides, and the speed under your own power. And it's also a bit risky. Now, all these concepts combined form an activity that can provide that neurochemical cocktail that we mentioned before that makes us all feel better. We're out of the house, provided that the weather allows, or there's always the indoor trainer. We're getting fitter, and we're having a good time. All necessary activities in the fight against pandemic-induced cabin fever, while also being a form of self-management that, according to Drs. Cooper, Heron, and Heward, who authored Applied Behavior Analysis, the standard text for all aspiring behavioral psychologists, leaves one feeling more in control of their life. And being in control of your life, to quote the doctors, feels good. I wonder if it's coincidence that all 3 of those behavior giants rode on the same road cycling team. Thank you.